Friends, I got to tell you, it's not been a fun stretch for me since the last time we spoke. The Yankees are not doing well in the American League Division Series. The Blue Jays have basically stuffed them in their locker the last two games, which brings us to today's show and my first question for our guest. And by the way, Zach Rachnerud joining us as the guest co-host today. Chad's out. And our guest today is Congresswoman Julie Fedorchak. And my first question for you, Julie, would it be possible to make the Blue Jays illegal? Can we do that for me, please?
Oh, I'll see if I can run that up the flagpole. I
Run
don't
that out.
know
Let's see.
who their fans are, but that the last game where that young pitcher who was in the minor leagues came through and pitched the entire game. What was his name?
Schlittler, believe it or not.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. What a great story. So
the Red Sox. Yeah, he was absolutely amazing. Funny fact about him. He's from Massachusetts and then shut down the Red Sox for the Yankees. So maybe he's not going to be able to go home again. I don't know how that works.
Well, I have a fondness for the Yankees going back to being my first pregnancy with our oldest. I was on bed rest when they were in the World Series, and so we watched them. And the last game, I was in labor, and we thought we were going to miss it, but I actually delivered her really fast, and we were holding her in our room watching the final game of the series, and got to see the whole thing. I didn't miss any of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I actually that 90s run, the 1996 when they won the World Series, I was actually in the hospital as well. I'd had a snowmobile accident. And I remember watching them run through that postseason. All right, we didn't talk about baseball.
Sorry,
not even here, and we're completely off track, and it's my own fault. We want to talk a little bit about, obviously the government shut down. There's a lot of things going on. One thing I wanted to start with, though, you and I had a conversation a while back, and you and I disagree about President Donald Trump quite a bit. And one thing that I asked you is if there was ever a red line that he could cross that would be like that's enough for you. And you said it's to abide by the courts.
Correct.
So I'm reading here. This is a headline from the New York Post, not exactly a font of left-wing sentiment. And the headline is, Trump defies federal court, sends 300 California National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon. This is despite a federal judge essentially finding that President Trump's determination about the situation of Portland was untethered to the facts. So what do you make of that, where the courts have said you can't deploy the troops, he's deploying the troops anyway? Does this concern you?
Well, I think he needs to follow the courts, like I've said before. I haven't followed that story or caught up with that this morning. They have the ability to appeal. My understanding was that they were appealing that. I know they disagree with that judge's ruling significantly. But my conversations with the administration you've got to follow the courts, appeal it, and go through that process. That's how the system's designed.
So, Congresswoman, one thing I wanted to jump into is with the government shutdown. We have kind of two different sides here going at it. The primary point of one side is that there's Affordable Care Act subsidies that are set to expire pretty soon. I've talked to a lot of folks recently, and there's plenty I know who are very reliant on these subsidies on the exchanges, including farmers and many, many families in North Dakota. And on the other side, we have this claim that the Democrat CR funds healthcare for illegal immigrants. And frankly, it just seems like baloney. Like, I'm not seeing any mechanism where that happens. They're not eligible for any federal programs, including the exchange. So my question for you is, do you have any hope that we can reach a compromise on this to restore some of these subsidies that are going to prevent, we're already seeing so many insurance companies say that premiums are going to rise dramatically?
Thanks, Zach. So we could probably spend the entire time talking about that one question because there's really three questions baked within it. So I'll start with the first one, which is the government shutdown. The government shutdown, in my opinion, is the responsibility lies strictly with those who voted to shut it down. And we passed, several weeks ago now, a clean continuing resolution to keep the government open. We should not be shut down. This is not a controversial thing. the Democrats had voted for this same level of funding even just back in March. And are on record across the board. Every single one of the Democrat leaders is on record saying government shutdowns are bad for people. They're bad for Americans. You shouldn't shut the government down when you don't get your way. They're all on record saying that. So we presented a very simple, clean, straightforward way to keep the government open, and they have consistently voted against it. So that's where I see, it's their responsibility. They have tied the shutdown, which the deadline for that was September 30th. They've tied that to the expiration of the COVID tax credits, which are at the end of the year. So those two are not connected. They're separated by 3 months. And we were very much at work developing a solution for what we're going to do about that expiration.
Let me just on that point specifically, talking about the ACA situation. Our insurance commissioner, John Gottfried, who I'm sure you know, spoke to that on an episode of Plain Talk not that long ago. He warned that if in a situation where if we don't fund these things, we're going to see a death spiral, was his words, death spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about, saying, well, it's just a few months, at the end of the year. This is what he said about that. I quote, "If they look at doing something, changing it in December, well, at that point, I've already gone on, shopped as a consumer, and realized the price is too high. I'm not going back in the last 2 weeks of the year to say, oh, well, maybe this time they promise it's going to be better." So his argument is putting this off to the end of the year is going to be bad news. What's your response to that?
So I hope you're not surprised to know that I've been in many conversations with John about this issue and our health insurance providers. Yesterday afternoon, I spent the entire afternoon, in fact, having a round table with our hospitals, long-term care associations, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, the insurance department, talking about this issue and others. And so I'm well aware of their concerns and the timelines here. So I want to address that, Rob, but I want to go back to what Zach was saying previously first, which is, so they're disconnected on timelines. Thirdly, on the illegal aliens and what the Democrats are proposing, it's really, really important for citizens to understand this. They have presented, their CR includes a $1.5 trillion in new spending, and included in that is a rollback of all of the health provisions we passed in the Working Families Tax Cut Act. All of those health provisions. In that act, we closed the loophole that blue states, Democrat states like California and New York, were using to provide funding, federal funding, to cover illegal immigrants on Medicaid. The federal government can't tell the states that they can't themselves create a program to fund illegal aliens on Medicaid. It's a state-federal program, collaboration. They can have their own requirements. Federal dollars cannot be used for providing health insurance or Medicaid to illegals. But the states can go ahead and decide to fund it themselves. California and New York do. And they were using federal dollars to cover their state match for illegal aliens. We closed that loophole in the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. And now by repealing this, they open up that loophole again, and they do indeed allow for coverage on Medicaid for illegal immigrants. That's why even the CBO agrees that these dollars could be used for providing illegal immigrants Medicaid. So that's, that isn't a 30-second soundbite, obviously. That took me a couple minutes to explain, which is why you can easily understand how this message is getting lost in the national back and forth on this issue. But it is the truth that they are repealing the entire health package of the One Big Beautiful Bill, and that's where we close the loophole that would prevent federal dollars from being used to provide insurance for illegal immigrants.
So, Congresswoman, one piece of that I'm kind of struggling with a little bit is when it comes to this idea of paying for healthcare for illegal immigrants. Isn't the choice we're kind of faced with in this scenario is either to force hospitals to provide uncompensated care and to shoulder that burden, or to start administering citizenship tests in the emergency room and to turn people away who aren't citizens? Like, I'm kind of lost on how we're gonna navigate that situation if it comes to it.
Well, I think the most important thing, Zach, is to make sure that we're not incentivizing people to come into our country illegally. And that's what you do when you create programs like this that provide pretty lucrative benefits to folks who arrive here illegally. So that's the federal government's responsibility. We don't want people coming illegally. We've got to stop incentivizing them.
I do think it's a mistake for Democrats to sort of on that issue. It's really hard over the years when we've heard, communities in blue states and maybe in blue states themselves that will say we're sanctuaries, we're not going to enforce immigration law, and then turn around and claim, well, there's no possible way that federal dollars could be used for healthcare for illegal immigrants, and clearly that's happening through the Medicaid program. So I think that's important. What's more concerning to me, and maybe you're ready to address this now, are Insurance Commissioner Godfrey's comments, saying waiting to the end of the year on this thing isn't good enough. You said you've heard their concerns. Why not now? I mean, why not address that now? It's going to have to be addressed in the end of the year. I mean, it's October 7th today as we record this.
Right.
I mean, the end of the year is not that far away.
We want to address it. We want to address it, as soon as we can. But you don't need to tie it to a continuing resolution to keep the government open. Like that it's inaccurate and it's ineffective to tie it to that. So we have been working on this. This is in the Energy and Commerce Committee. So we've been working on this. There's a number of good solutions for this program. But as it relates to this too, I want to take a second to educate a little bit on this program as well. So this is the enhanced premium tax credits. There are premium tax credits that are not enhanced. These were enhanced under the Biden administration to allow and incentivize more people during COVID to get insurance, right? So they extended the criteria, made it available for more people. So basically, they took off the income cap. It used to be the income cap was 400%, and they basically changed it so that anybody who was spending 10% of their income on health insurance 10% could get the premiums. So that pool is several thousand, maybe 7,000 North Dakotans, the people that are using the enhanced premium tax credit. It is not the full 50,000 or more who are getting the premium tax credit. So it's a smaller pool. I'm not trying to suggest that it's unimportant, but I think it's important to recognize that the entire premium tax credit program is not in jeopardy here. It's just the enhanced piece that the Democrats extended and put a deadline on. So, let's remember that too. They even recognized they could have made it permanent a couple years ago when they were in control, and they didn't, because it was intended to be a temporary thing to help people get insurance coverage. Now, there's ways to do it so that there isn't like a cliff, and I support that. I don't think we should have a cliff where all of a sudden they go away. But keep in mind, this is a $350 billion program if we extend it as is. So it warrants some policy discussion. It warrants careful consideration of how we do this. And so we want the time to do that in full in committee, not attaching it to a continuing resolution that's agreed to by the, four leaders, basically, and President Trump. So I really think we need to open the government up and get back to business, negotiating this and coming up with a real solution that is the right solution for this program at this time and gets us going in the right direction.
So shifting gears a bit, I kind of want to talk about the trade war and everything that's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like today we're going to be getting an announcement of some kind about soybean farmers specifically. But my question really centers around, we recently saw the $20 billion debt swap with Argentina, and now they're selling soybeans to China. My overarching concern with a lot of this that's going on when you tariff the entire world all at once is that, farmers, the number one thing they want is markets. And I'm gravely concerned that come next year, there's going to be no markets. Like, all these trading partners of our past are going to find new options for free trade, regardless of what kind of deals we can get done. So I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on that. Where do you see us going as far as taking care of our farmers in that way?
Absolutely. I see really 3 or 4 different key policy priorities as it relates to agriculture. First of all, I 100% agree with you, Zach, on the markets. Our farmers want markets, and that's they don't want more government assistance. They've been clear on that. I've been talking with them on this since I was first in office in January, and even before. So we got to get the markets. Is it taking longer than I hoped, or even than I think the Trump administration expected? I think it is. So there's an urgency to this that is really critical right now. And I've been expressing that to the USTR, to the USDA, like on a regular basis. We are in conversation with them about this. There have been some good deals announced. Vietnam announced a significant increase in purchases. No, Taiwan increased their purchases by 25%. That's going to help. There's other countries, UK, also increasing their purchases of ag products. I know the Trump administration has this front and center. They're trying to negotiate a whole bunch of other things with China, and China has weaponized agriculture. So that's the situation that we're in right now. So short term, I'm supportive. I sent a letter to President Trump last week of some sort of a market facilitation grant program to help our farmers get through this fall, because they basically have been blocked from access to the markets. And so somehow we got to get them some cash to pay off their loans, because they aren't able to sell their soybeans in virtually anywhere, very limited markets. So that's the first thing. Second and third, though, there's other big structural things that I think are going on with agriculture, and that is the inputs. The input costs are way too high. We have to try to get those down. Energy costs are built into those, so that's one area where I think we can make some gains and drive down energy costs. The cost of fertilizer, we should be producing more fertilizer in the U.S. I think some of the trade negotiations could help us get some of that fertilizer production back in domestically. So that would be helpful. So there's the input costs, there's credit. We need to make some improvements in how farms are financed. Their credit costs are too high. So that's a big problem. And then, the whole regulatory issue with the farmers and some of the land issues. So there's a number of things we can work on agriculture and are working on and to address their challenges kind of globally. The good news is that we did get a good chunk, like probably 85% of the Farm Bill passed in the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. And so we've got the crop insurance improvements are already passed and in law. We raised the reference prices. So once we get through this fall, I think we have some structural improvements for the farmers going to the next growing season. But we do need to open up those markets and address some of these other challenges, like the input costs that farmers are facing.
Is there a point at which it's time to admit that the tariffs thing, this approach of just slamming tariffs down, and really at times, I mean, it's hard to track what our tariffs are. I mean, people have to wake up in the morning and read Truth Social to find out sometimes what our trade policy is. Is there a point at which we admit that that's just not working? I mean, it seems like we've seen this show before. During the first term, we did the tariffs, and then we had to bail the farmers out. Now we're doing tailored tariffs, and it sounds like we're going to bail the farmers out again. Our ag commissioner, Doug Goring, is in the state saying, basically saying the words he used were doom and gloom. He says, it's not the prices are bad. We've lived and farmed with these prices before. Our problem is the cost of production, the input cost that you're talking about. It's going through the roofs. He says tariffs add more costs, which continue to inflate the price of goods and services. And then he said, even if you drop interest rates, you actually boost inflation. I'll tell you another issue, interest rates. And I've had producers say we need lower interest rates. And I'll tell you, you could give them the money for free and they still wouldn't make it. That's what our Republican Ag Commissioner is saying. I mean, is there a point at which admitting this doesn't work? Because it doesn't seem to be working. I don't know what we're accomplishing.
Well, the economics in agriculture right now are really, really tough. I mean, we are definitely seeing that across board and in constant conversation with the ag community on this issue. And I'm meeting with Doug this afternoon as well, and the corn growers tomorrow. So as it relates to tariffs, just recently, the House extended the authority that the president is acting under to negotiate these tariffs to January. And so we want to give them a little more time because, we do have to constantly step back and look at the bigger picture here. Both Rob and Zach, look what happened during COVID when we saw the dependence that our supply chain has on other foreign countries. We don't produce enough goods in America. We couldn't even, go to the bathroom without having toilet paper during COVID. Like, it was really bad. And
But
so
one
we
of
have
the
to,
great things, I mean, we're told all the time, America produces far more food than Americans could ever consume. So
we
that doesn't,
do.
yeah.
Yeah, I know, but that's the trade-off. So trade goes both ways. So what do we export? We export agriculture. What do we import? Just about everything else. And so if we want to get some of these imports, some of that manufacturing back into the U.S., and we have to negotiate with our other countries, the thing that they're using as a tool, that kind of their weapon against us, is agriculture, because that's what they buy from us. So that's why it's so tough for farmers. They're the tip of the spear. And so that's why I think you're seeing, like, yes, I'm concerned. All of the other farm state representatives are very concerned. We are very, very eager to get a deal and start having some announcements. I texted Secretary Rollins last week and said, what's going on? When are we going to start seeing this? And she's like, we're working on it 24/7, any day. Any day, we're expecting to have some things finalized. But like I said, the ag issues are wrapped up in so many other non-ag related negotiations. And that's where, our farmers are just at they're in the crosshairs right now. So that's why I do support the temporary payment, the temporary assistance this year. I know it's not what farmers want. It's not what I want either. But it's going to be necessary if they don't get these export markets open so that they can actually have some cash, because soybeans is their cash crop. Soybeans was the cash that they used. They'd sell, got the cash, and started paying off their operating debt. So they need something to replace that. And so that's why I'm supportive of this. And if they do these payments, if we come up with a plan to use them, we'll be using tariff revenue to help support that, which also I think is appropriate.
So, Congresswoman, I'm going to be frank here. This question is extremely difficult for me to ask, but I feel like it needs to be asked. After this summer, we had the tragic murder of Democrat House Speaker Melissa Hortman. We had the evil murder of Charlie Kirk. I think it's safe to say that the national temperature has never been this high, or not never, but in recent memory. Yet not one time have I seen President Trump calm us down to say we need to come together as Americans. Instead, I see him say over and over again that Democrats are demonic, that we're satanic, that we're evil. He's saying it in front of troops, Congresswoman. These are what I assume some of your friends, they're 30 to 40% of your constituents. You seem to have a bit of an ear of the president after your meeting in the Rose Garden, et cetera. Are you willing to ask him to turn the temperature down and to be a unifying leader we desperately need right now?
Listen, I believe in leading by example, and that's what I'm doing. I am one that tries to use measured language. I treat people with respect. I don't tolerate. I have zero tolerance for any sort of political violence or violence as a whole in any issue. You saw me, very much condemning the murder of the legislator in Minnesota. Doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat. There's no room for political violence, and absolutely, I'm encouraging all of my colleagues
How
to
about the
lead
president?
by example. Well, when I see the president, I'd be happy to encourage him in that way. Absolutely.
one last question before we go. We got about a few minutes left with you. We talking about the bailing out the farmers and everything, and we went through everything with Doge, right? Where all the massive spending cuts, and then during the government shutdown, that President Trump was promised dramatic additional cuts. The feeling sometimes on the rhetoric, because both at terms, I think Democrats sometimes overreacting to some of this, and also Republicans overselling it at times, is that you would think that our fiscal situation would be improving. But I looked at the most recent. Well, when I looked at it, maybe they've released the September numbers now, but I looked at the August numbers. We're still on track for a budget deficit this year of about $2 trillion. I have yet to see it demonstrated that Donald Trump is anything approaching a fiscal conservative. So when are we going to get this in hand? And what does Congress's duty to step up and make the guy? Well, I mean, assuming Congress has the will to do anything about it, to make the president do something about this, because this seems completely out of hand. Running an annual budget deficit in the ballpark of $1 to $2 trillion is not only unsustainable, I would argue, is dangerous. And also, we talk about not wanting to be dependent on supply chains and everything overseas. Well, we're sure as heck dependent on borrowing money from our creditors. So what is the national security implications of making ourselves so dependent on our creditors?
Absolutely, Rob. I 100% agree with you. And we aren't doing enough. We need to do more, which is why first step, we have to have a sensible appropriations process, which we're trying to do with this continuing resolution. We are closer than we have been in decades to getting a budget passed on the regular order, which means getting all of the budgets through a regular appropriation process. So we want to do that. We want to continue that, and we think we can complete that by the end of by November 20th. Is it going to be a balanced budget? No, it isn't, because we aren't going to do this all in one fell swoop, but it's getting us in the right direction. It's two things. It's revenues and spending. We've worked hard to correct and create a strong environment for growth in this country with the Working Families Tax Cuts plan. That's step number one. So hopefully we will see more investment, more revenues in our country as a result of that. And then we have to do more to cut spending. We are doing that. We have done that. You've seen the rescissions package, but it isn't easy. Make no mistake about it. Every single thing that gets cut or threatened, our phone rings off the hook, even from North Dakotans. I mean, I've been shocked at how many people are mad about the government not funding public television. I love public television. I love public radio, but the government does not need to be funding that. They can get that funding on their own. But we have had countless people complaining just about that. So this is hard. That doesn't mean it isn't important. We are going to keep working on it. And I'm thinking about this all the time. What sorts of parameters can we put in place? Tools can we use to force this issue and to get going in the right direction?
Is there a point at which we have to consider things on the revenue side as well?
You mean increasing taxes?
Possibly, yeah.
I wouldn't go there. That's not where I would start. But, I'm not saying that I would never do that. I would never say that about anything, but that is definitely not where I would start. I think we've got much more of a spending problem, not a revenue problem.
Julie, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Rob. Good to see you guys.